Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ful-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me is a full team for today's episode. Mozza, how you doing, buddy?
Well, as you can see from my Ful-on t-shirt, if I can hold that up close enough for everyone to see, I'm ecstatic. Still available on the store. However, on a serious note, I do have to preface this podcast because I've been doing some research. I need an answer. We've got a geezer that plays for us called Willian. Now, I've seen that he's born on the 9th of August 1988. I can't work out how many years of age that makes him. So if anyone knows, please can you comment or get in touch? Because I don't know.
Well, mate, if you're going to shamelessly plug the store, so am I. The T-shirt that's currently on screen will tell you how old he is. So Willian is 36 years old. Just 36-year-old Willian, just in case anyone.
Sorry, how
Just
old was that again?
36-year-old Willian. Just call him by his full legal name. Anyway, talking the legal stuff, Drew, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. That was a seamless link if there ever was one. Caught me by surprise.
Yeah,
You should say illegal and then come to me, because that would have been a real fucking downer. You'd be like, what the fuck?
AJ, how you doing, buddy?
I'm getting to work. I don't need to tune into this shit.
AJ, how you doing, buddy?
I don't really think I can top either of those intros. So yeah, hi.
Get us back to normality, AJ, because it's already gone off the rails, and we're 3 minutes in.
We're not even 3 minutes. We're 1 minute 54 in, and it's all gone wrong. No, obviously we're here to talk about the Tottenham game on Sunday. You know,
Ash,
lovely result.
Ash, Tottenham fans, look away now. You're going to enjoy this.
Well, look, before we talk about the game, Drew, we can talk. Let's have a quick word, because you called it before the game when we asked you to sort of describe Tottenham and how they play, and I think you put it quite seamlessly yourself. You know, you're talking about Tottenham fans, by the way. If you didn't see the previous show, I do actually have a clip for what Drew was expecting from Tottenham on Sunday. So,
let's have another look.
Let us know if you agree. But this is what Drew thought pre-game.
We're playing Tottenham, who are, with the best will in the world, pussies.
I've decided I'm just going to leave this.
I think you still stick by that.
Podcast.
I put a lot of thought into that. You could see actually my brain turning when I paused. Yeah, I mean, I know we're going to get into this, and I don't want to jump the gun, Ash, because you like to go through the game like chronologically. But first goal basically took the fight out of them, didn't it? Let's be honest. They had a little flair, and they did what Tottenham did. No running back, no covering, no working hard, no fight, and that's what they do. But anyway, we'll come on to that. So I'll keep my mouth shut for now.
To be fair, mate, you probably put it perfectly pre-game. So, but we will come back and talk about it. We'll start where we always start. We look at the starting lineups of the game on Sunday. Tottenham made 7 changes from the team that played in the Europa League on Thursday night, which is a bit of a shock, I think, considering the fact that they have 18 days between the game on Sunday and the next game. You know, maybe that helped us a little bit, maybe not. We'll come and discuss their performance, especially, you know, they had a scary looking bench pre-game when you looked at it to look at the players that had the quality to come on, but ultimately they're being set up by a manager who looks like he's completely lost it at Tottenham, and it just didn't work for him. And we made one change going into the game. AJ, I'm going to come to you, mate, because we always speak to you about this. Looking at that starting lineup on Sunday, what were your thoughts? Were you happy? You know, we did have some pre-discussions about Emil Smith-Rowe and Pereira, but what were your genuine feelings about the actual lineups?
It was nice to be finally right about 36-year-old Willian. Everyone seemed to think that wasn't going to happen and that he wasn't going to get any major minutes for the remainder of his contract. And he was going to be a bit part bench player, but I think our injuries kind of forced the hand. However, there is now a huge question mark on future games. And again, sorry to jump to the end, but we'll very quickly skim over it. Ryan Sessegnon has scored 2 goals in 2 minutes of being on football pitches in his last two games where he's appeared in the Premier League. So I think he's really going to be asking some questions about that left wing spot very, very soon. Back to the lineup. Pleased to see 4 at the back. Was happy with the performances of most of the squads, and yeah, it wasn't really too much to scream home about. It was kind of what we expected to see.
Yeah, well, look, we can. I know we always like to. Well, I always like to look at games chronologically. Let's look at the first half. Fuck all happened. We had one shot on target that was very weak by Castagna, and there's the penalty incident with Rail. For me, it is a penalty. I know he goes over really theatrically, but he's still pushed in the back. It's only made worse by the fact that Spurs then get a free kick 9 seconds later through a similar yet slightly less forceful push in the back from Bassi. Drew, there isn't much to talk about the first half, but that penalty incident, was it a penalty for you from where you were sat, over in the Johnny Haynes? Was it a penalty for you? Because it was clear for me, and I was in Hammersmith.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it, but Raul did himself no favours. I mean, he literally looked like he'd been whacked with a baseball bat across his back the way he went down. And I think it might have worked against him. I mean, if I was, the test I always apply was, if that happened outside the penalty box in another part of the field, would we have got a foul? Quite possibly. But I think Rail undermined his own case on that one. But yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I know we'll come on to Ash, and I don't want to jump ahead, but we had the Bassi situation later in the game, and Tottenham fans were going mental about that. So it kind of evens itself out, but I wasn't. I mean, I suppose I would have been more. I'd have been more upset about it if Tottenham had been posing any sort of threat, but they didn't. I mean, they literally carried no threat in the first half. But yeah, I mean, it could have been given, but I wasn't, principally because of Raul's, dive. I wasn't disappointed. It wasn't, but yeah, I thought it could have been.
I think for me, the frustration comes from the fact that there is then obviously a foul like 9 seconds later on the outside of the box that is given the other way around, that is just as soft or just as bad. I think you're correct though, fully correct in the fact that Rail's reaction is probably the reason why that penalty isn't given. What I can't believe though is that in a world of VAR, they haven't looked at that properly and gone, well, he's clearly 2 hands in the back and pushed him, because he's at fault. His arms have gone from bent to fully straight in his back. So it's a frustrating one. But as we will talk about the probably Spurs penalty at the end of the game, it has evened itself out. Going into that half time, Mozza, the football wasn't really great in the first half. We did speak pre-game about we don't know what Tottenham are going to turn up. We don't know what Fulham are going to turn up. This game could be a worldie. It could be an absolute snooze fest. We were struggling at half time to actually come up with points to speak about today, weren't we? How are you feeling going in at half time? Because I was bored and it wasn't great.
Well, as a peek behind the curtain, as we sometimes say, at half time, I remember texting our WhatsApp group and saying, how am I still shocked that we haven't scored? Because we see this an awful amount with Fulham, where we've got chances we could be the dominating side, yet for multiple reasons, I don't know, someone's not getting the service, the ball's getting crossed in to nobody, we haven't got any sort of aerial attack. I was frustrated, but for some reason it still surprised me, because I thought we had been playing well despite everything that we've just said. But it worried me. And in typical Fulham fan fashion, or even typical Fulham player fashion, I thought, here we go. second half come in, we're going to throw it away. And I won't say much more than that, depending on what your next question is as we go through the game chronologically. But I did nearly fill my pants with cake, shall I say, as the second half began.
Well, look, let's look at the second half now. Obviously, it starts off. Tottenham came out looking pretty positive in the second half. They clearly had a bit of a rocket put up them. They took off Basuma and brought on Bergwall, who I thought was outstanding for them. He was a real handful for us in that second half. Ange probably played his cards a bit there at half time because he brought Son on as well. And anyone who can bring on Son Mignon, you have a chance in a game, right? It's one of those things that he's an absolute world class player. He's probably been, a bit unlucky this year that the strike force has changed in a way that he's less effective for them going forward than he would have been last year when there was Kane at top for them. I was a bit surprised that they took Brennan Johnson off, but he was pretty mute and didn't really do much in the first half. It's one of those things. But for us, we basically had to react to Tottenham coming out in that second half. And it's funny, we'll mention it because, we moaned last week about Marco's substitutions and how they don't really change the way that they don't really change our setup. They don't change our formation. They tend to be really, really like for like. But in the 63rd minute, he brings on Muniz and he brings on Traore, and it completely changes the game. Traore, I don't know. It's not necessarily him having the ball and running at people that changes the game. I think people are just really wary of him. It's now got to the point where him just being on the pitch causes defenders to second guess themselves. I thought that Tottenham were having a lot of luck down their left hand side before he came on, and I think him coming on just sort of stopped that a little bit because they couldn't commit as much because they knew that if they did, he'd be straight around the back. But I've got to talk about Muniz. AJ, he was outstanding when he came on. He won every header, even before he scored. I was watching a couple of the Tottenham fan reaction videos where they were saying that he scored with his first touch. I don't know what they were doing watching the first 20 minutes he was on the pitch because he won everything. Every header he had, every time the ball came over, he won it. All the flicks were working, all the passes were working. He was outstanding on Sunday. I don't like even before the goal. What were your thoughts on Muniz? Because I think he deserves some flowers because he was brilliant.
Yeah, Muniz was tremendous. He brought a real physicality to our front line, and his hold up play was tremendous. There was a bit where he pulled it out of the sky and juggled it twice before passing it off to, I think it was Castagna out on the right hand side. It was just something to behold the way he held up that ball, and it was something we haven't seen in a really long time. We've seen glimpses of it from him, but traditionally he'd win the header and then have a loose touch and then be chasing it back towards himself or something along those lines. But no, everything was really tight to his body. Everything was really strong and really just well possessed. And it meant that we could create really great opportunities breaking fast, which was a beautiful sight to behold. In regards to what you did mention about Traore, though, he had such a significant impact. They swapped fullbacks.
Yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it? Because he worries defenders, and you go with that. I thought Muniz was outstanding. Look, we'll go from talking about the sublime to the slightly mediocre. And Drew, I'm going to come to you with this one. 72nd minute, obviously we bring on Tom Cairney and we take off Emma Smith Rowe. Another game from Emma Smith Rowe where he had bits of parts where he looked decent, but he cannot get a solid game of football in him at the moment. What do we really have to do with him? Because there's obviously a lot of expectation on his shoulders, being the club record signing and stuff. And we have spoke about it a few times where we go, we probably should expect more from him next year than we're expecting from this year because mentally he needs to be a bit rebuilt. And we know Marco's really, really good at that. But has it got to the point now where maybe him not being in the squad for the starting 11 might actually be the thing that we need? Because I think he hinders us at times. And I think there was a few moments in the game on Sunday where it even looked like the Fulham players didn't want to pass in the ball when he was the easy pass on, and it sort of all culminated in that corner where he then, basically kicked the ball over the Hammersmith end. What do we do with him?
You touched on this in the preview show, Ash. One of the problems we've got at the moment is our squad's stretched pretty thin and we are running out of steam. I watched Iwobi closely against Spurs, and in my mind, for a lot of it, he was chasing shadows. At one point in the second half, he got completely done and had to pull the Spurs player back by the shirt. It happened over by the Johnny Haynes stand. And I texted you boys and I said he was very lucky he wasn't carded there. The reason I mention it, and it does lead back to Smith Rowe, is we are at the moment limited with options, in my view. Harrison Reed, who we all adore, has basically missed, 3/4 of the season and is working his way back to match fitness, it still seems. Sessegnon has been a reclamation project, as has been discussed on this pod previously. Marco brought him back with the plan to spend at least the first half of the season rebuilding him emotionally, mentally and physically, which he, full credit to Marco, he appears to be doing. Smith Rowe worries me, not so much because of what he is or isn't doing, it's because the crowd and Fulham Twitter are starting to slowly sour on him. And it worries me greatly that he's not going to have the strength of character to stomach it. I think one of the things, and if we take Sessegnon as a comparison, I think one of the things that seems in my mind to be abundantly clear is Sess seems to have more about him physically and mentally after his challenges at Tottenham. It's made him a stronger man. I wonder whether Smith Rowe needs something similar in terms of his transfer and his essentially scaling down from the heights of Arsenal to Fulham. And I think he may be onto something. I think we may be talking about Smith Rowe as the centrepiece of the team, not this season, maybe even not next season, maybe a couple of seasons' time, because I think he does need more experience and he needs a harder shell. I mean, I was worried about the balance, as you know, because I mentioned it on the preview show, with having Pereira and Smith Rowe in. But at this moment in time, and Pereira has come in for it on this pod, he's outperforming Smith Rowe. And if I'm looking for a number 10 right now, yeah, I mean, everyone knows that I'm biased and I want to see Josh King play. But that's not going to happen. But if I'm looking at number 10 now, I'm looking at Pereira. I'm with Smith Rowe. It's so frustrating because you can see the skill, but he just, instead of laying the ball off and then going forward, he'll look to go lateral. So we end up passing it sideways, and it's just an Ash. I know this is one of your favourite talking points about Fulham: the amount of people we get ahead of the ball into the box. We don't commit, and he's one of those players that should commit because we've seen him do it. We've all seen him do it. Coming against Leicester, coming against Palace. So yeah, it worries me. I mean, if we had more depth and less injuries, I would be more than happy to take him out and just give him some time on the sidelines. But I don't know. I do wonder whether Silva feels that because he spent so much money on him, he has to play because it's a vindication of Silva's judgment. I'd hope not, because I think Silva's bigger than that. But you do wonder because, as with Pereira, when we had those conversations about his stats were not marrying up with the eye test. Yeah? I'm wondering if we're going down a similar path with Smith Rowe. But yeah, the short answer to your question is I would be happy to take him out if I could play a midfield three of Lukic, Berge and Pereira, or Lukic, Berge and Iwobi, or Lukic, Berge and King. Because I think AJ's point about Sessegnon is well made. Sessegnon having such an impact in limited minutes, his case for a place in the team is just going to get stronger. And bearing in mind, I mean, you were there, Ash. I mean, the Hammersmith end just erupted when he scored. I mean, literally, they were trying to suck the ball into the net because they absolutely adore him. And Smith Rowe doesn't have that yet. And I am worried that the crowd are going to start to sour on him, because there's already, if you follow Fulham Twitter, there's already a few accounts that are handing it out to him.
Yeah, it's slightly concerned. I think that we had this conversation last week when we spoke about. We said that the difference between ESR and Andreas Pereira at the moment is the effort that's been put in. You know, even on his worst games, you would never ever fault Andreas Pereira's effort. You can always see him trying to put the effort in. The problem is with Smith Rowe I think it's just because of the style of player he is. I don't necessarily think it's actually who he is. He often looks like he's not putting the effort in, but I think it's just his style. I think the way he approaches the game, it looks like that, and it's one of those ones that when it works and he plays excellently, he looks like everything's effortless. But the problem is that when you need effort and you're in a game where you're sort of in the trenches a bit, you know, you need someone to have a little bit of stomach, and he looks like he doesn't have it and it's the exact same thing, isn't it? It's like, you know, it's frustrating to watch, but it is what it is. It's just an interesting one with Smith Rowe, and we'll, you know, because we're all in the same boat. We all want to protect him. We all want that player to come out and be that £35 million player. It's becoming a bit too much of a reoccurring theme that every other week he's just not performing to the level he could be. Look, let's talk about the 2 goals. Let's talk about the end part of the game, which is the magical part of the game. Obviously, you know, we sat here and we criticised Marco Silva's substitutions after the Brighton game because they were same to same, like for like. But in a game where we probably could have done with the like for like substitutions that did come on and they worked, you know, Muniz come on, looked outstanding, as we say, and it goes with his goal. You know, Spurs have a player who ends up 3-on-1 with Fulham players. You know, Fulham break out. It's a decent ball put in by Jedi, who, you know, probably had a few in the game that weren't that great. Traore does really, really well not to snatch at a shot and instead try to find ESR, who then, you know, deftly touches the ball to Muniz, who puts it away. Lovely finish. Mozza, great, outstanding finish, right? Because the keeper's had a good game for Spurs, but he's just put it literally bottom corner. He just could not get to it. It was a lovely, lovely goal.
Yeah, well, but sorry, not to embarrass you, but I've just had to rewatch it back in front of me on the TV after you said that, because I think it's actually Pereira who knocks it on to Muniz, but from a distance, with the blonde hair, they do look similar. But I think we're all going to get to Mr. Pereira later, anyway. But yeah, you're right. Bit of a goalmouth scramble, nice ball in by Jedi. Traore had an opportunity, but I think it was great that he took his time, controlled it, knocked it onto Pereira. Even Pereira has an opportunity there to score, but he did the right thing, knocked it to Muniz, first touch, bang, bottom left corner. I mean, it's a great goal. I don't think there's much the keeper can do about that, to be honest. But I think you could see how much it meant to Muniz as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think when he celebrated, he looked a bit emotional, as he has done in the past when he scored and he might have had a bit of a drought. You can see how much it really means to him. And I just thought, yes, mate, well deserved, about time. But I don't think there was anything really the keeper could have done about that. I think if you're going to criticise how Spurs handled it, you'd have to look at their defence there. But yeah, great goal. And well done, Muniz.
And then comes literally 45 seconds later, the next bone of contention in the game with the penalty claim for Tottenham. For me, it probably is a penalty. You know, if that was the other way around, it happened in the other box, I'd want a penalty. You know, I know that it's one of those ones. It may be a bit soft, but I think Bergwell gets the ball ahead of Bassi, and then Bassi just sort of connects with him. And we've seen him given this season, you know, and it's one of those ones that, you know, it's frustrating. But, you know, let's chalk it off. 1-1 because the Real one should have been a penalty in the first half, and we'll keep going. AJ, let's talk about the moment, because there's one part of this game. This game has one moment in it which is probably going to go down in Fulham folklore, in the sense of this whole story of Ryan Sessegnon, this whole redemption arc of Ryan Sessegnon. We spoke about it at the beginning of the season, about when he came back and how much we were all, emotionally so happy to see him come back to Fulham. It's just a bit of a mad 1 minute. He gets subbed on in the 89th minute. Leno basically just toe blows the ball off the other end of the pitch, and there's this weird moment where it's just like Jed Spence lets him go, like just stops marking him, and then the ball bounces awkwardly and in front of Ben Davis, who then sort of loses the bounce, and then you see Ryan there, and you're sort of thinking like he can get it, and then he sort of stands up really well and he bodies Ben Davis brilliantly. And then the ball drops to his right foot, and pretty much everyone's like, "Oh God, not his right," because he's, we know how strong he is on his left compared to his right. He just beautifully bends it into. I can't even describe the feeling what I was going through when it went in. There were many, many people crying around me after it had gone in because how beautiful it was of a moment. How did you feel about it, AJ? Because it's one of those ones that it's going to go down, and we're going to tell our kids about it when you talk about the emotions of some football and how it can get you.
Yeah, you haven't really left me much to say about it.
Well, I wonder how you feel, not necessarily about the goal. I wonder how you feel.
Yeah, I'm not the most vocal football fan when I'm watching from home. I am at the stadium, but when I'm watching from home, I tend to be quite reserved, cup of tea, watch the football, quite calm and collected. It's rare I will sort of jump up and celebrate a goal in the league. That got me off my feet. That one got me cheering as if he had just scored in a cup final. That one brought me back to Wembley, Villa, Kearney's goal. That one was pure emotion and everything we wanted to see. And the absolute audacity of his celebration, non-celebration. Like, he didn't do the whole hands up, respect nonsense. He just sort of picked himself up, looked around, and just sorted off. And it was just, yeah, it like paints pictures. It'll be murals on people's walls. It'll be framed on desks. It'll be up there with the Fulham goals of times past. And it's there despite not being a really relevant football match. Like, it's not Hamburg, it's not beating Juventus 4-1 on the second leg. It's not a night at Wembley for the Championship playoff final. It's not our final game to secure promotion from the Championship. It's just your casual league game. But the pure aura of Sessegnon versus Spurs just paints itself. The bloke is aura farming, if I've said that right, kids.
Yeah. Do you know what? We often talk about football narratives and stories, right? Drew, you've expressed how you feel about Ryan Sessegnon coming back at the beginning of the season. We all know, you're fully versed on, the job that Marco's doing to rebuild him mentally, let alone physically. Storyline wise, it's up there, right? Selling a player, seeing that player, career, sort of stall massively. Not necessarily his fault, loads of injuries and stuff, comes back to Fulham. He's now scored more goals in 98 minutes for Fulham than he did for the whole time, 5 years he was at Spurs, which is a bit mental when you think about it. How are you feeling about it, mate? Like, how does that whole, because it's a special moment, really. We could have done a whole 40-minute pod on it. It's a special moment.
I was in a kind of
Speechless.
weird way, I was kind of relieved because he looked like the Ryan Sessegnon that we saw burst onto the scene. Although he is physically stronger now, obviously, because he's a 24-year-old man instead of a 17-year-old boy. I mean, Ash, you will know probably better than me that he was training with Palace last summer, and they didn't sign him, and it started being leaked by Palace that Glasner thought he wasn't up to it and wasn't very good. I mean, I don't know how true that was. I don't know how close Palace were to ever signing him, but it seemed to be. It was just a fairy tale that we all wanted when he came back to Fulham. I was a little bit worried, I've got to be honest, that it was a marketing move more than it was a move for footballing reasons. And it was done to engender goodwill from the fans. But Silva, to his credit, has come out and said that it was his decision to bring Ryan back. And those among our regular viewers will have noted that I've said a few times that I suspected Silva was taking it very slow with Ryan because he'd had such a hard time at Spurs. And it may well be, and I'm not trying to disrespect Ryan here at all, Spurs was too much for him. And he's better off being a club like Fulham. But when he scored against Spurs, I got to be honest, there was a little bit of relief because he looked like the Ryan Sessegnon we all knew. And if he's done it once, we know he can do it again. Yeah. And it does seem like his redemption arc is going to be complete. I mean, the only way it could be topped, Ash, is if he scores the winner in the FA Cup final at Wembley. I mean, that will be Roy of the Rovers stuff. Most of our subscribers will be going, Roy of the who? But that will be absolutely out of this world. But yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest, probably relieved because he looked like the Ryan Sessegnon that we all loved and we remembered. Because I didn't want him just to be a token. I didn't want him to be a symbol. You know what I mean? Because I still believe in him as a footballer. And I just thought, yeah, I mean, you can say what you want about Spurs defending. They'd given up by then. Jed Spence, I have no idea what he was doing. I genuinely have no idea what he was doing. But that's not our problem. Because Ryan still had to hold off Ben Davies, and Ryan was on his weaker foot. And he scored a cracker. I mean, if Bruno Fernandes had done that, Sky Sports, or Top 6 News as they're known, would be playing it on a constant loop. Yeah. But no, I think initially, obviously I was excited about the goal, but I was kind of relieved because I know he's there for the right reasons. I know, especially going into, how many games we got left, AJ?
9.
9. Going into the last 9 games, bearing in mind how tired the squad has looked and how stretched we are, we could really do with his re-emergence because he gives us something. Yeah, because we all know, and Ash, I don't keep meaning to go back to the point you keep making about the fact we don't get enough people in the box. He's got an eye for goal. He will follow the ball in. And I don't know about you boys, but without Wilson in the team and with Smith Rowe not being on it all the time, we seriously lack those sorts of players. So he could give us a dimension that we genuinely don't have. But so, yeah, relief for all sorts of reasons.
I think we also should give Muniz a shout out because he completed one of the most impressive bunny hops I've seen in a very, very long time. Ryan Sessegnon celebrating that. But let's wrap talking about the game up. We'll finish it how we always do. Lads, I want man of the match and a couple of honourable mentions from all of you. AJ, I'm going to start with you, mate. Can you give us some honourable mentions and man of the match for the game, please?
Yeah, I'll go in order. My lowest honourable mention is Sessegnon himself. He didn't have enough minutes in the game to give him any more plaudits than I can do. But his goal was exceptional. His aura farming is exceptional. We love you, Ryan. We do. Next is Muniz, actually. I thought he was exceptional when he came on the pitch. Again, just not enough minutes total for me to sit there and say you've probably earned yourself a man of the match performance. Next up, same excuse, not enough minutes, but my God, did he change the way we looked like we were playing? And I don't think he's being given enough credit for his cameo. It is our captain, Tom Kearney. He was exceptional once he entered the pitch. He does something that ESR doesn't do, in that he knows how to lose his marker. Whether or not it's strolling around the pitch at absolutely no pace, the way he finds the ball and the way he moves with the ball, he always loses his marker. ESR has a habit of having to play 1-2s back to whoever gave him the ball because he's got someone on his shoulder. Whether or not that's because the teams choose not to mark Kenny or not, I don't know. But Kenny is just the space, the way he plays, the timing of his passes, everything's just so much better when he's on the pitch. And we go from just possession football to controlling football. And then my man of the match, to nobody's surprise, because he was voted the official man of the match, is Andreas Pereira. He was elite. He was ridiculous. It's like everything he normally tries to do came off this game. And I think it just leans into more of that. He loves these big game appearances. He loves playing against these big teams. Yeah, Spurs are below us in the table, but you big six Sky Sports News football teams, basically. He loves it. He absolutely loves it. He loves putting in an absolute show for them. But on top of that, he was also unselfish in the way he was playing. Normally, when he bigs himself up for these big games, it's all about him. For whatever reason, that wasn't the case, and that made it even more impressive, which is why he's my man of the match.
I can't really argue with any of that. Mozza, what about you, buddy? Give us some honourable mentions and your man of the match, please.
Honourable mentions, I'm going to have to say Calvin Bassey at the back. He was just not to be messed with, the way he bodied some of the other players. I don't even know if he got a yellow card at any point, did he? Were there any yellow cards given out at this point in the game? I can't remember. AJ might have to confirm, but there were a few sort of
I don't think there was any yellow cards at all in the game.
Yeah, so we didn't even talk about the referee, but that I don't care at this point. But yeah, Calvin Bassey, not to be messed with at the back. I think, yeah, subs that came on, I thought Traore making the runs. And as I always keep saying, please can someone take it inside of the box, let's not cross it in. The pace of the geezer, yeah, that changed a lot of things. Yeah, Muniz. I've got to mention the goal scorers. Muniz played out of his skin, aerial attack, which is just what we need. I appreciate his goal wasn't an aerial goal, but dangerous all around. Sessegnon, yeah, just magic, poetry. I cried. I made a couple of sounds which I won't repeat before he scored, and I couldn't even cheer. I just cried. That meant so much to me, that goal. Anyway, sorry. I was going to give my man of the match to a guy who's 36 years old, Brazilian fella called Willian. But he'd be he's second place for me. But like AJ said, I've got to give it to Andreas Pereira. Just I feel like that's the Pereira that we saw when he joined, and yeah. I've always been like a big supporter of his, despite some of the controversy that happened recently, and he went a bit off form. But I loved him in the same way that Ash loves Calvin Bassey, to the point where my friends and family would refer to Pereira as boyfriend to me, and recently so they've been calling him ex-boyfriend, because he'd sort of fallen out of favour. But I'd just like to make it clear to everyone now that I am single, and Pereira, you know where to find us. So
Blonde does it for you.
Right. Okay. Well, look, you say you have love for Pereira, but we all know Ryan Sessegnon is your first true love, and we'll share with everyone exactly why that is in a minute. But Drew, how about yourself, mate? Man of the match and honourable mentions, please.
I think credit's got to go to Silva, because when Spurs made their first changes, the game started to flow in their direction, and the changes that he made not only counteracted the Spurs substitutes, but ultimately won us the game. When Bergvall came on, their Scandinavian midfielder, I mean, he was immense. I didn't realise he was only 19. So full credit to Silver. He got it right. He really did get it right. And the work that he's done behind the scenes with Sessegnon, I mean, full credit to both of them. Honourable mentions, I thought Berge was immense, bearing in mind he was what you would call a really only defensive cover in midfield. Some of the plays, especially that I was watching in the second half, I mean, he was just fantastic. Bassi, for no other reason than he completely flattened Romero, and that is now going to I love it. Anderson seems to be rounding back into form, which is nice. He didn't do anything flash, but he was solid. Obviously, we've talked about the substitutes. Willian surprised me because I didn't think he was going to last as long.
Sorry, who?
The 36-year-old. And I think AJ was right about the impact Traore had. I think Traore did well. But yeah, I'm happy to give it to Pereira. Credit where credit's due. You know, he worked hard and he looked, especially when he was running with the ball, he looked like he wanted to make something happen. But yeah, I mean, it was just a really good day all round. Had some really good performances. So.
Yeah, look, I know we've overrun massively tonight, but we wanted to, give Ryan, that respect he needed to talk about. For me, man of the match wise, honourable mentions, Bassi is a great shout, but no one's shocked by me saying Calvin Bassi should be man of the match. I think that there was a lot of really good performances in the game. I thought Leno made a couple of really good stops on Sunday. He did really good at slowing the game down as well at the end. And if he's going to get credit for the assist to Ryan Sessegnon, then good on you. He basically just toe blows the ball at the pitch, and Ben Davies is the net defending, does the rest. But we'll go from there. I think Berge was outstanding. I thought Jimenez did really, really well until he was taken off. I thought Muniz did brilliantly when he came on. Not even going to start talking about Ryan Sessegnon's 4.5 minutes on the pitch. Let's talk about the fact that, we had 16.5 minutes of Tom Kearney and 36-year-old Willian on the pitch at the same time. That's enough, watching buses reverse in terms of speed. But, they were great. And they really helped us control the centre of that pitch a bit. So they both deserve shouts. But I'm going to have to agree with you. Andreas Pereira's man the match by a long shot on Sunday. I think for the first time in a long time, we didn't just see Andreas Pereira effort. We saw Andreas Pereira everything, and it worked. And for a show like ours, where we've been there to criticize him in moments when he needed criticism, he deserves to get the plaudits when he does what he did on Sunday, because he deserves it. We just need to see it more. As a football club, we need to see it more. And if we're going to get further, we're going to keep pushing for Europe. If we're going to do well in the FA Cup, we need to see more of it. Because he's very much a linchpin in how we play. But before we close off, there is one more bit of business that we need to talk about today. Mozza made a very interesting point about Andreas Pereira basically being his boyfriend, but we've got a video. Anyone who's seen our TikTok this week will probably already have seen it. That would argue that maybe your first true love is Ryan Sessegnon. Let's watch it before we ask when the EP's out. But let's have a quick watch.
Sir? 36. All right. Yeah, years. Hello, everybody. Hope you're all well. How we doing? Oh, who's left that there? I wonder if we've got a plectrum on me. That's handy. Is it in tune? Let's see. Thank you for embarrassing me. I've got an improvement though. Hang on. What if we go?
Hey!
He's one of our own. He's one of our own. Oh, Ryan Sessegnon, he's one of our own. That's not original. There you go.
Yeah.
Funny,
Mate.
I've got one too, but I won't get into that on here because I can't sing for shit.
You know, Mozza, you know, you summed it up perfectly about how we all feel about Ryan Sessegnon, you know, enough to make the video. You know, I love the work, mate. Keep it up. We are still waiting for our theme tune to be written, though, just so you are aware. But, you know, we will keep waiting. Look, guys, thanks very much for joining me on this Spurs review. As much as it was a boring game to watch and it only really livened up in the 78th minute, there was enough action in that last sort of 15 minutes to keep us talking for 40. So, you know, let's celebrate that. Obviously, there's no football this weekend, international break. We are still hoping to have an episode out for you on Friday where we're going to have a little bit of discussion about, you know, the upcoming games. You know, we've got the FA Cup game and what realistically should be our goals for the rest of the season, what we'd like to see from certain players, and maybe what we'd like to see from Marco Silva. But we'll see you there for Friday on that one. Other than that, thanks very much, guys, for joining me, and come on, you Whites.